Hi, everyone, and welcome to my show once again. I am really happy to have you all here. Let me know if you are watching this live or if you're watching the replay. It's really I enjoy doing this, and especially I enjoy coming up with different topics to talk about. The way I select the topic is, something has to light up. Almost I call it like popping, something lights up and I have an awareness about something. And then I say, okay, cool, this is something that I'm going to talk about today. So last week I asked for people to give me suggestions for topics for my show, for my weekly show. And someone suggested abuse, and it just, kind of popped up. And I said, okay, awesome. This is something that I'm going to talk about. Hi, Joseph, and hi, Facebook user. You guys have to give permission to StreamYard if you're on Facebook for me to be able to see your name. Otherwise, I will not be able to see your name. Okay, and so it popped up and I said, okay, let me start exploring abuse, because it's also something that I am going to be working with. So I have this program coming up called 21 days of deep healing. And in deep healing, one of the things that we are going to work on is abuse as well. I will talk about it later. So I started, doing a little bit of research about it, and I'm going to talk about 10 types of abuse today. And there's a lot of information, and of course we'll do a few releases and stuff like that also. But let's get started. So the information that I got, it comes from the website of Social Care Institute of Excellence in the UK. And today we are going to go into the types of abuse, and also we're going to go into the indicators of abuse. Okay, so there are 10 types of abuse. So I'm going to list out the 10 types of abuse, and after that I'm going to go into more details about each one of these types. And if you have an awareness of any other type of abuse, I think most of the abuse will fit into these types. But whatever your awareness is, feel free to let me know in the comments below as well. Okay, so the first one is physical abuse. Number two is domestic violence or abuse. Number three is sexual abuse. Number four is psychological or emotional abuse. Number five is financial or material abuse. Number six is modern slavery. Number seven is discriminatory abuse. Number eight is organizational or institutional abuse. Number nine is neglect or acts of omission. And number 10 is self neglect. Now, these could actually go, kind of overlap also, but, pretty much they have their own category. Okay. So I'm going to go into the first one, which is physical abuse. Okay. So let's go into the types of physical abuse. Okay. So assault, hitting, slapping, punching, kicking, hair pulling, biting or pushing, rough handling, scalding or burning, physical punishments, inappropriate or unlawful use of restraint, making someone purposefully uncomfortable, example, opening a window and removing blankets, involuntary isolation or confinement, misuse of medication, that is over example is over sedation, forcible feeding or withholding food, unauthorized restraint, restricted movement, that is example is tying someone to a chair. Okay, So, as you listen through this to this, I'm sure, a lot of things come up for people. So let's release on this, okay? All the physical abuse that you have, let's release on that. And everywhere where you have been part of contributing to physical abuse, let's release on that as well. And everything that physical abuse brings up for you, let's release on that as well. And then, there are also possible signs of physical abuse, and these are no explanation for injuries or inconsistency with the account of what happened. Injuries are inconsistent with the person's lifestyle. Bruising, cuts, welts, burns, and or marks on the body or loss of hair in clumps. Frequent injuries, unexplained falls, subdued or changed behavior in the presence of a particular person, signs of malnutrition, and failure to seek medical attention. These are all the possible signs of physical abuse. Now, how many of you can kind of identify these signs or are aware of these things going on around you? Like, keep an eye on it. The purpose of this is just kind of to be aware of what to look for. Okay. The next one is domestic violence or abuse. Okay. So let's look at the types of domestic violence or abuse. Domestic violence or abuse can be characterized by any of the indicators of abuse outlined, which are psychological, physical, sexual, financial, and emotional. So I think we will be going in detail about each of these in the following ones. And possible signs of domestic violence or abuse are low self esteem, feeling that the abuse is their fault when it's not, physical evidence of violence such as bruising, cuts, broken bones, etc., verbal abuse and humiliation in front of others, fear of outside intervention, damage to home or property, isolation, that is, not seeing friends and family, and limited access to money. These are all signs of domestic violence or abuse. Okay. The next one, and this one will have a lot of charge for a lot of people, and this is sexual abuse. Now, remember, we are dealing not just with this lifetime stuff, we are dealing with stuff from other lifetimes as well. Okay. So, even if you, quote unquote, have no conscious memory of anything happening to you in this lifetime, but you still experience some of the effects of it, it means that it's coming from some other lifetime. Okay. So types of sexual abuse: rape, attempted rape, or sexual assault, inappropriate touch anywhere, non consensual masturbation of either or both persons, non-consensual sexual penetration or attempted penetration of vagina, anus, or mouth, any sexual activity that the person lacks the capacity to consent to, inappropriate looking, sexual teasing or innuendo or sexual harassment, sexual photography or forced use of pornography or witnessing of sexual acts, and indecent exposure. See, the it's really important to know what constitutes abuse, because a lot of times people go through abuse without really knowing that they are being abused. And so when you know what are the types of abuse and what are the signs of abuse, then you have the awareness that you're going through abuse and you can do something to change it. Possible signs of sexual abuse are bruising, particularly to the thighs, buttocks, upper arms, and marks on the neck, torn, stained, or bloody underclothing, bleeding, pain, or itching in the genital area, unusual difficulty in walking or sitting, foreign bodies in genital or rectal openings, infections, unexplained genital discharge or sexually transmitted disease, pregnancy in a woman who is unable to consent to sexual intercourse, and so on. Poor concentration, withdrawal, sleep disturbance, excessive fear or apprehension of or withdrawal from relationships, fear of receiving help with personal care, and reluctance to be alone with a particular person. So let's do some clearing around sexual abuse. So, all the sexual abuse that you have, let's release on that. So the question is, can I share this video in my page? I don't think you'll be able to share it from the group, but you can use the YouTube link to share it. After this live stream is over, I'll share the YouTube link with you. Okay. Um, Everywhere, everything within you and outside of you that keeps you a part of of sexual abuse. Let's release on that. And everywhere that you have been a part of perpetrating sexual abuse, let's release on that as well. So, all the domestic violence or abuse that you have, let's release on that as well. Everywhere you have been a perpetrator of domestic abuse or violence, let's release on that as well. And everything within you and outside of you that keeps the domestic abuse or violence in place, let's release on that. Okay, so those are three. Let's go on to number four. Number four is psychological or emotional abuse. So, the types of psychological or emotional abuse are enforced social isolation, preventing someone accessing services, educational and social opportunities, and seeing friends, removing mobility or communication aids, or intentionally leaving someone unattended when they need assistance, preventing someone from meeting their religious and cultural needs, preventing the expression of choice and opinion, failure to respect privacy, preventing the expression of choice and opinion, sorry, preventing stimulation, meaningful occupation or activities, intimidation, coercion, harassment, use of threats, humiliation, bullying, swearing, or verbal abuse, addressing a person in a patronizing or infantilizing way, threats of harm or abandonment, cyberbullying. So, all these come under psychological or emotional abuse. And possible signs of psychological or emotional abuse are an air of silence when a particular person is present, withdrawal or change in the psychological state of the person, insomnia, low self esteem, uncooperative and aggressive behavior, a change of appetite, weight loss or weight gain, signs of distress, which is tearfulness, anger, apparent false claims by someone involved with the person to attract unnecessary treatment. So these are all signs of psychological or emotional abuse. Now, to a large extent, all of us have experienced this one way or the other. It need not be like in a lot of intensity, but small intensity. And all of us have also been responsible for perpetrating this as well. So let's release on this. So, all the psychological or emotional abuse that you have, let's release on that. And everywhere that you have been a part of perpetrating emotional or psychological abuse, let's release on that as well. And everything within you and outside of you that keeps emotional and psychological abuse in place, let's release on that. Okay, so I'm not really looking at the comments because I'm looking at my notes, but I'm going to come back and look at the comments at some point. There are a lot of comments that I see which are about workplace abuse, and that is one of the types of abuse. I'm going to come to it in just a bit, okay? So we're going through 10 different types of abuse today, and everything will be covered within these 10 types, okay? So we've done, I think, four so far. The next one is financial or material abuse. So the types of financial or material abuse. The first one is theft of money or possessions. The next one is fraud or scamming. The next one is preventing a person from accessing their own money, benefits, or assets. The next one is employees taking a loan from a person using the service. The next one is undue pressure, duress, threat, or undue influence put on the person in connection with loans, wills, property, inheritance, or financial transaction. The next one is arranging less care than is needed to save money to maximize inheritance. The next one is denying assistance to manage or monitor financial affairs. The next one is denying assistance to access benefits. And in a lot of cases, this is the kind of abuse which occurs with old people, who are dependent on someone for their needs, even though it is their own money. Misuse of benefits or direct payments in a family home, someone moving into a person's home and living rent free without agreement or under duress, false representation using another person's bank account, cards, or documents, exploitation of a person's money or assets, example, unauthorized use of a car. The next one is misuse of a power of attorney, deputy, appointeeship, or other legal authority. And the next one is rogue trading, which is example is unnecessary or overpriced property repairs and failure to carry out agreed repairs or poor workmanship. So, what are some of the possible signs of financial or material abuse? uh, Missing personal possessions, unexplained lack of money or inability to maintain your lifestyle, unexplained withdrawal of funds from accounts, power of attorney or lasting power of attorney being obtained after the person has ceased to have mental capacity, failure to resist to register and a lasting power of attorney after the person has ceased to have mental capacity to manage their finances, so that it appears that they are continuing to do so. So what it means is that you don't register a power of attorney and everyone thinks that the person themselves is continuing their transactions, etc. The person allocated to manage financial affairs is evasive or uncooperative. The family or others show unusual interest in the assets of person. Signs of financial hardship in cases where a person's financial affairs are being managed by a court appointed deputy attorney or lasting power of attorney. Recent changes in deeds or titles to property, rent arrears and eviction notices, a lack of clear financial accounts held by a care home or service, failure to provide receipts for shopping or other financial transactions carried out on behalf of the person, disparity between the person's living conditions and their financial resources, example, insufficient food in the house, and unnecessary property repairs. So, all of this, let's release on that. Wow, there's a lot of charge to this particular one. I wasn't really expecting that. Okay, so all the financial abuse that you have, let's release on that. All the financial or material abuse that you have. And everywhere where you have perpetrated financial or material abuse, let's release on that as well. And everything within you and outside of you that keeps the financial and material abuse in place, let's release on that as well. Hi, Chelsea. So that's five. Let's go to number six. Number six is modern slavery. So the types of modern slavery are human trafficking, forced labor, domestic servitude, sexual exploitation such as escort work, prostitution, and pornography, debt bondage, that is being forced to work to pay off debts that realistically they never will be able to. So, possible signs of modern slavery are signs of physical or emotional abuse, appearing to be malnourished, unkempt, or withdrawn, isolation from the community, seeming under the control or influence of others, living in dirty, cramped, or overcrowded accommodation, or living and working at the same address, lack of personal effects or identification documents, always wearing the same clothes, avoidance of eye contact, appearing frightened or hesitant to talk to strangers, and fear of law enforcers. So all the modern slavery that you have, let's release on that. And everywhere you have perpetrated modern slavery, let's release on that as well. Wow, that's really heavy. And everything within you and outside of you that keeps modern slavery in place, let's release on that as well. Okay, the next one is discriminatory abuse. So, unequal treatment based on age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion and belief, sex or sexual orientation. Also, unequal treatment based on any of this, okay, is called discriminatory abuse. And I think this is the most prevalent form of abuse. Actually, all are most prevalent. But, right now, for example, abuse based on the color of your skin, abuse based on the religion that you belong to, abuse based on the country that you belong to. All these are discriminatory abuse. Verbal abuse, derogatory remarks, or inappropriate use of language related to a protected characteristic, denying access to communication aids, not allowing access to an interpreter, signer, or lip reader, harassment or deliberate exclusion on the grounds of a protected characteristic, denying basic rights to healthcare, education, employment, and criminal justice related to a protected characteristic, and substandard service provision related to a protected characteristic. And here, protected characteristic, it kind of refers to each one of these things. Okay, and signs of possible signs of discriminatory abuse are the person appears withdrawn and isolated, expressions of anger, frustration, fear, or anxiety. The support on offer does not take account of the person's individualized needs in terms of a protected characteristic. So, all the discriminatory abuse that you have, let's release on that. So, bullying comes under psychological and emotional abuse. Discrimination based on community will definitely come on discriminatory abuse. Everywhere where you have been a perpetrator of discriminatory abuse, let's release on that as well. And everything within you and outside of you that keeps the discriminatory abuse in place, let's release on that as well. Yes, Angela, discriminatory abuse also includes discrimination by body form. I think they term it under disability. It's called kind of disability. Okay. The next one is organizational or institutional abuse. And this one would include all the workplace abuse and workplace bullying that we are talking about. Okay. So, types of organizational um, or institutional abuse: discouraging visits or involvement of relatives or friends, run down or overcrowded establishment, authoritarian management or rigid regimes, lack of leadership and supervision, insufficient staff or high turnover resulting in poor quality care, abusive and disrespectful attitudes towards people using the service, inappropriate use of restraints, lack of respect for dignity and privacy, failure to manage residents with abusive behavior. So this could also actually include institutions like elderly care and things like that. Okay, but it also includes your workplace. Not providing adequate food, drink, or assistance with eating, not offering choice or promoting independence, misuse of medication, failure to provide care with dentures, spectacles, or hearing aids, not taking account of individuals' cultural, religious, or ethnic needs, failure to respond to abuse appropriately, interference with personal correspondence or communication, and failure to respond to complaints. And possible signs of organizational or institutional abuse are lack of flexibility and choice for people using the service, inadequate staffing levels, people being hungry or dehydrated, poor standards of care, lack of personal clothing and possessions, and communal use of personal items, lack of adequate procedures, poor record keeping and missing documents, absence of visitors, few social, recreational, and educational activities, public discussion of personal matters, unnecessary exposure during bathing or using toilets, absence of individual care plans, and lack of management overview and support. I think this is more talking about, institutes where you have people with disabilities or, the older people and so on, but also it could also mean your workplace. Okay, I think workplace is not really included in this, and I'm going to look at workplace in a different way, as another type at the end. So if you have ever experienced abuse in the workplace, just let me know in the comments what you've experienced, and we'll do some clearings on that. Okay, so all the organizational or institutional abuse that you have, let's release on that. And everywhere where you have been a perpetrator of organizational or institutional abuse, let's release on that as well. And everything within you and outside of you that keeps the organizational and institutional abuse in place, let's release on that. So, Aurora, did you mean racial discrimination in relationship to workplace abuse? Because if you're just looking at racial discrimination by itself, then we already did discriminatory abuse. But if you're talking about it in relationship to workplace, then yes, that would be valid. Racial discrimination in the workplace. Okay. So everything within you and outside of you that keeps the organizational or institutional abuse in place, let's release on that. The next type of abuse is neglect and acts of omission. And the types of neglect and acts of omission are failure to provide or allow access to food, shelter, clothing, heating, stimulation and activity, personal or medical care. So this could be like, for the elderly, Also, it could be in case of children, like especially if you're a foster parent or something like that. Providing care in a way that the person dislikes, refusal of access to visitors, failure to administer medication as prescribed, not taking account of individuals' cultural, religious, or ethnic needs, not taking account of educational, social, and recreational needs, ignoring or isolating the person, preventing the person from making their own decisions, preventing access to glasses, hearing aids, dentures, etc., failure to ensure privacy and dignity. And possible signs of neglect and acts of omission is poor environment, which is dirty or unhygienic, poor physical condition and or personal hygiene, pressure sores or ulcers, malnutrition or unexplained weight loss, untreated injuries and medical problems, inconsistent or reluctant contact with medical and social care organizations, accumulation of untaken medication, uncharacteristic failure to engage in social interaction, inappropriate or inadequate clothing. So, everywhere that you have neglect and acts of omission, let's release on that. Everywhere you have perpetrated neglect and acts of omission, let's release on that as well. And everything within you and outside of you that keeps neglect and acts of omission in place, let's release on that as well. The last one is self neglect. Second last one, I'm going to go into workplace abuse as well. So, types of self neglect are lack of self care to an extent that it threatens personal health and safety, neglecting to care for one's personal hygiene, health, or surrounding, inability to avoid self harm, failure to seek help or access services to meet health and social care needs, and inability or unwillingness to manage one's personal affairs. So, like just yesterday, I was watching The Good Doctor, and there was a case of what's that, eating disorder, where they starve themselves, and they literally, even if they eat anything, they vomit it out. I'm not getting the name, so if any of you get that name, it's that disorder. So that was like a form of abuse, self abuse as well. Okay. And possible signs of self neglect are very poor personal hygiene, unkempt appearance, lack of essential food, clothing, or shelter, malnutrition and or dehydration, living in squalid or unsanitary conditions, neglecting household maintenance, hoarding, collecting a large number of animals in inappropriate conditions, non compliance with health or care services, inability or unwillingness to take medication or treat illness or injury. So all the self neglect and yeah, anorexia nervosa. That's the one. That's the one. So all the self neglect and self abuse that you have, and one really big part of self neglect and self abuse is judgment, self doubt, self judgment, blaming yourself, making yourself wrong, self flagellation. punishing yourself. All of these are all parts of self abuse and self neglect. And I spoke a lot about this in the show that I did last week, which is on self love. So you can find it in the same group, in this group as well, or on my YouTube channel. Okay. So all the self abuse and self neglect that you have, let's release on that. And everywhere where you have perpetrated self abuse and self neglect, everyone does this. Let's release on that as well. So um, when I'm yawning, it's not like I'm sleepy, but it's more of an energetic release that occurs. Okay. uh, and everything within you and outside of you that keeps self abuse and self neglect in place, let's release on that as well. Okay, now the last one, which is workplace abuse. And so I'm not really going to go into the types and signs that there is workplace abuse, but I'm just going to clear on things that some of you have written down here. Okay, so all the workplace abuse that you have, let's release on that. All the workplace abuse and workplace bullying that you have. Everywhere where you have been a perpetrator of workplace abuse, let's release on that also. And everything within you and outside of you that keeps the workplace abuse in place, let's release on that as well. All the racial discrimination that you face in your workplace, let's release on that. All the supervisors hovering physically, eavesdropping, and controlling behavior of the supervisors, let's release on that. Video surveillance and audio surveillance without informing employees in the workplace, let's release on that as well. Supervisors misrepresenting situations to upper management about you. Let's release on that as well. Supervisors stealing professional knowledge and representing the knowledge as their own. Like, this is like a really big, big, big abuse. And this is very, very prevalent in the workplace. Okay, so let's release on that. Disciplinary action in the workplace based on lies. Let's release on that as well. Gender discrimination. Let's release on that. Tammy, thank you so much for all your input around this. This was really very valuable. Reputation is one other form of abuse, reputation abuse, wherein your name is spoilt by spreading rumors and gossip. Okay, so let's release on that as well. That actually that actually comes under judgments. Okay, but yeah, okay, let's release on all that as well. Um, um, Using fear of losing one's income as a leverage of control. Let's release on that as well. So I think we've pretty much covered everything in this. This was like a really long session. So thank you everyone for being here, hanging out with me. And of course, if you have any suggestions about topics that you would like me to cover in future shows, let me know in the comments below. Every week, I will be going live at the same time here. I look forward to having you join me, whether it's live, whether it's a replay. And typically, I like to take topics which pop, and of course, I do a lot of energetic releases as well. So, thank you, everyone, once again. Um, and I will see you next week. Oh yeah, before I forget, I'm doing 21 days of deep healing, and in these 21 days of deep healing, I'm going to be working on everyone in a group, and I do a process called energetic releases. And this time around, I'm going to work on really specific things, which is like I'm not good enough, inner child issues, uh, issues of abuse and stuff like that. So really going deep into stuff like really old energies that are keeping you stuck. So if this is something that you would like to be a part of, it begins on September 5th, and the link to sign up is in the description above. You're also welcome to join me in 5 days of money releases, and this begins on September 15th. So thank you, everyone, and I will see you soon. Bye.